what happened from start to finish in the particular battle that was Game 7. So once again, the storyline continues in the Marshall. Will this ultimately prove to be the right approach or wrong approach that Jan is going to hammer away at this line until he finds a crack in the armor? Again, we have the same position we've now seen 4 times whenever Jan is on the white side. We've seen H3 from Game 1, and then A4 in Games 3, 5, and 7 today. Magnus Carlsen repeats his approach from Game 5 with the move Rook to B8. And Fabi, that's our first moment, which was not necessarily a surprise for you, but an interesting takeaway that means to you as someone who's been in a World Championship match and prepared. That means Magnus believes in this line with Rook B8 if he's playing it twice.
Yeah, I think that Jan's approach is a good one, to keep trying to find some sort of holes in Magnus's preparation. And also the fact that he got an advantage in the 5th game from the opening does give him confidence that Magnus's preparation here is not infallible. It was a surprise that Magnus decided to go for the same line, which we felt is a bit speculative. And it didn't feel like he was 100% prepared for what followed.
Yeah.
Jan came up with a new approach, and we were a bit surprised that Magnus was thinking a lot early on.
Yeah, it was this move D3 that was the new approach. Again, for those more advanced players or just everyone following it closely at home, C3, of course, was the move that Nepomniachtchi played in Game 5. But D3, and after the move H6, knight to C3, Robert, this is the idea, if you will, right? You put the pawn on D3 to keep the C3 square vacant, and after Rook E8, knight D5, you were feeling pretty good about Jan's chances until this moment right here, and you have the floor.
Yeah, I predicted Jan Nepomniachtchi would win this game.
Yeah.
And you don't predict somebody to beat Magnus Carlsen after a loss unless you really believe in their strength and think they're a phenomenal player. But knight takes F6 check here, that is not a good move. And I think at this stage of the World Championship, it's almost borderline inexcusable because he can just play bishop D2. He can keep the momentum of his position. He doesn't have to clarify matters for black. And it made Magnus's life so much easier after knight takes F6. When you have more space in a position, you really typically do not want to initiate trades, especially because you moved your piece first from B1 to C3, then C3 to D5, and now you're taking again, and the black queen comes out to F6, which is a useful square. So I felt like bishop D2, keeping more of the tension alive and forcing black to come up with decisions, that would have been the proper play here. And knight takes F6 just made Magnus' life very easy.
Yeah, and let's expound upon this, right? We have the time, we have the energy, because it's you just made bold statements, right? It's not just that it's a move that, by the way, watching this live, we were all like, what? Like every one of us was surprised. And to use the term inexcusable, I mean, what are your thoughts, Fabi, in terms of having played in a World Championship match, right? You never lost a game in Classical, so you were never fully in Jan's shoes. But do you agree with Robert that in hindsight, now that we see how quickly this game petered, that this was it just doesn't make sense to allow the game to go down this road?
I do feel like he played this quickly, and that was why I wasn't sure if I should be surprised when it happened live, or if because this was simply...
We thought it was prep maybe or something.
His preparation.
Right.
But the feeling, the moves we were looking at did not involve knight takes F6. They were all keeping the tension in the center and forcing black to make that difficult decision. Robert mentioned bishop D2. There's even moves like bishop to E3, because that rook on B8 can potentially get in trouble, like let's say bishop to E3, knight takes D5, bishop takes D5, knight goes, let's say, to E7. Now bishop to A7, that rook is trapped. Maybe the bishop gets trapped in the end too, but these are lines that would be difficult for Magnus to calculate and assess. So knight takes F6, it might not be a bad move objectively, but it is a move that simplifies Magnus's defensive task.
Well, remember, in the game, you also were mentioning, there were, for bishop D2 and bishop E3 seemed like best, but if we're just listing opportunities to maintain the tension, even C3, and even the idea of C4 at some point has come up multiple times. So, yeah, a little, and again, with hindsight being 2020, giving us even more clarity, more things that don't make sense, especially when we just listened live in the voice, and Jan was saying, maybe knight takes F6 wasn't good. Well, it's like, well, were you in preparation or not, right? Because if it's not good and you're already out of prep, don't you know from the practical point of view you should be keeping as many opportunities alive as possible?
And I feel like Magnus would never make that move.
Yeah.
Because Magnus, he really is king at making his opponent sweat it out until the last detail is accomplished. And as we saw the game continue here, it's not that either side played badly. It's just not maximizing the potential of the position, because look at how Magnus played bishop E6, And then once d4 happened, which is a move you don't really want to play because it allows black some more trades, opening up some counter strikes. Whereas if you could refrain from making the move, white has control of the A file. So there's not too much happening dynamically speaking, but white controls the A file, which is why I like bishop e6, so that black could play rook e8 and compete for it. So I do think that Magnus makes defensive measures look very easy, and that's all credit to him. But I think that Jan also participated in that ease.
Yeah, bishop c2 was something we briefly mentioned to at least keep pieces on the board, but as you said, Magnus is already in a position that at least the plan is clear. He can challenge the A file. Once d4 was committed, Fabi, I'll let you talk about maybe what we, in hindsight with Ifan here, was maybe the last moment to keep something going, and we did just see the players discuss this in the postgame.
Well, I think d4 was a fine move, but here he very quickly played cd4, and I don't understand. I understand the move. I understand that it's the most natural move, the first move you think of. I don't understand the rush to make it.
Yeah.
Because obviously he thought about knight takes d4. They were talking about it. So.
And this was the line they were talking about for the record: bishop b3, queen b3, and b4. But then Magnus suggested the very move you were analyzing with Ifan.
Yeah. And if you're in Jan's shoes and you see this position, this is very committal for black and very positionally risky. Why not spend some more time and think about the possible implications of this? Instead, you go for another line where Magnus's moves all flowed very naturally. Knight g6, c5, etc. So here, they mentioned the move queen to e5. We heard that more than once, the move queen to e5, and they were saying that black is equalizing here. I don't understand why black equalizes here. I just don't get it. If white plays, there's a number of moves, even queen to d3.
Even Ifan's f3, by the way, but okay.
Even f3.
We'll go queen d3.
But I just noticed that queen to d3, well, you can't move the knight from e7 because of knight c6 wins a piece. If you play c5 here, you might think, oh, I've got some tactical stuff going on. f4 is also an option, but let's say knight to b5. I just saw a tactic here. Queen takes b2, bishop to d4, c takes d4, rook e to b1. That queen is trapped.
Man, Fabi feeling fresh. Look at that.
In any case, this is a super risky line for black.
Yeah.
So
and you were right, f4 is certainly a possibility as well.
f4 might just be crushing black, you know? So, yeah, our feeling when we were discussing this live was that after c4, white is the one who has chances to have a large advantage. Yep. I don't understand the rush from Jan. I understand the move. I just don't understand the practical decision not to spend a bit more time here.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement, and I do want to temper some of my statements because I'm looking at this from the perspective that Jan is competing for a world championship, a stage that Fabiano's been on, a stage I certainly have not. And it's not that I'm angry at Jan, but if he is going to really try to win this world championship, you can't just make these draws, and you have to spend your time in those critical moments. And so I'm not walking back my statements. I really firmly believe that knight takes f6, and then also not considering knight takes d4 here. I think that these decisions have to be taken into the grand scheme of things. They're tired. They played a really long game, but both players played a long game, and Magnus has the lead. So if you are going to wrest that title from the #1 rated player for the last 10 years, you need to make the most of the positions that you get. Yep. And Jan just isn't doing that both in previous games and in this one here. It just feels like your time's running out, even though there's half a match left.
Ironic to say that time is running out because time probably needs to be taken by Jan at the board. And I'll just add one final thought to everything you said is not only do I agree with you, but it's also not just that maybe the opportunities are slipping, it's that they seem to be slipping in the fashion that historically Jan has been criticized for at times, playing too quickly in critical moments, whether it was pushing the pawn to c3 in game 2, whether it was queen e4 in game 6, right? You don't want to see that because you know what Jan's capable of. That's why neither one of us is angry. This is not our game. We're here to commentate, right? But it's like you want to see that. And when you know what the critical moments are, you don't want to see anything that could ever be classified as careless by a player. And you're worried that you may look back with regret if you're not going to slow down in some of these big situations. So,
and also, we understand, of course, fully. We've all played those long games. We understand that the players are tired.
Yep.
But you can rest after the match.
Yep.
I mean, you only get one chance at this.
Yep.
You can't just say, I'm tired and I'm going to play a calm game with white because this is one of your few chances that you're going to get to put pressure on Magnus.
Yep.
You can't really count on winning with black for the most part, so you have to make the most of these tiny chances that you have against him.
And if some of you are wondering, okay, but what happened next? If some of you might be just tuning in, well, we're spending a lot of time on this critical moment because unfortunately for you, there wasn't much that happened next. The lines were very forcing. Bishop takes b3, queen takes b3, and knight g6 immediately hits e4. There's literally nothing to do here from what we talked about. Jan did go for a forcing line. The only other move you suggested, Fabi, was queen c2. But here, Black's response could be a number of things.
I think c5 is what Black will do no matter what White does. And we could see similar things to the game, because if White takes on c5, we see a big exchange.
Yeah.
The main difference is that here e4 is not hanging.
But b2 is.
Yeah, but in the position after c5, this would probably lead to very close to a draw.
Yep.
Here e4 is not hanging, so White has a bit more freedom. And Yifan mentioned the move rook a6. There might be like rook a to d1. Since e4 can't be captured, we keep the tension in the center, and maybe White can continue to play this game.
Okay.
White can also consider d5, and we get some sort of Benoni structure, which is probably a decent version for Black. But you're still left with that slightly not misplaced, but slightly passive bishop on f8. This is probably fine for Black, but it would be a fight.
Okay.
Rook e to c1 was just not a fight. After c5, it's just...
Essentially, a draw was offered, if you will, after e5. Yifan, again, spotted queen f5. Shout out to our other commentator and partner who's not here with us as we bring this to a close. The trades happened, and the rest was a matter of technique, as they say, but not in a way of converting any advantage, but just simple rook ending technique. One final trick, because Fabi was mentioning it, I do think it's instructive, to not be careless in these moments. Magnus plays rook c8, the most accurate way to offer a trade of b for c. If b4, there was this fun rook b1 pin. And then after b3, the key, everyone, is king f1 works precisely because you can't play rook c8 to trade the b for c pawn anymore, because White captures and protects, which would mean we're forced into a variation like this, where actually White could win. So funny little trick. Of course, we did not see an epic blunder in the World Championship. Instead, we saw a simplification. I'm playing it out, guys, because there's really not much more to add. And that was our Coinbase Rapid Recap. Chess.com's coverage of the 2021 FIDE World Championship is brought to you by Coinbase. Whether you're an experienced trader or just looking to make your first crypto purchase, Coinbase has you covered. Visit coinbase.com/chess to get $5 in free Bitcoin just for verifying your account today. What'd you think?